Ho 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 ho! Welcome one and all. It's time for an Age of Sigmar tournament report. And it's a one-dayer, so that means 3 games, TSN Arena. They're running a series of one-day events there over the festive season, even into this week, one of which I'm going to be attending for the Old World on Tuesday of all days for a tournament. What a time to be alive. So, 2,000 points of juicy Age of Sigmar action for one day, fresh after those points updates recently that have attempted to address some of the issues in the game. Probably not enough of them, but some, Stormcast in particular, certain units have been hit with a bit of a points increase, others have been given a little boost. So let's see what I've brought in this list, shall we? So, I've gone for Double Dragon, which is controversial because that is over half the points of the army on 2 models. Which isn't that wild for Age of Sigmar, actually. You do see that quite often. You'll see a big centerpiece leader of some kind. Some of those can get up to like 700 points. And then maybe another monster as well. So, not that strange. 2 dragons, Krondis and the Stardrake. Krondis being the general, and you can see his beautiful wing there in this photo. And I've decided the most controversial choice of all in this list is no long strikes. The points have gone up, and I thought, you know what, it's only a one-dayer. So if I take 0 long strikes, and it turns out to be the most horrific thing I've ever experienced, and I don't want to ever do it again, then it's only 1 day of pain I have to endure. And if it's great, then maybe I can run proper lists without them in the future. But I still see a big future for long strikes, despite the fact that the points have gone up. I think it would take more of an increase before they stop being ridiculously good. And during this event, there were a few occasions when I thought I would really like to have long strikes right now. But other occasions where it was just fine without them. So let's see how it goes. In Krondis's regiment, we have got, not pictured on the table, 3 Grand Hammer Annihilators, which is also a controversial choice at the moment, because dropping down from the sky and trying to make a 9-inch charge used to be difficult enough, but now people can redeploy away from you, so it can be potentially even harder now, which is a bit tricky for them, but if they do get in, they still do some good damage, and doing mortal wounds when they land is quite nice as well, since a lot of mortal wound shooting has been taken out of the game, so anything that can still project mortal wounds outwards still has a bit of a place. And 3 Praetors to act as Krondis's bodyguards, who are also in the sky because they can now declare their master from the sky and then drop down at the appropriate time, so they're not having to waste command points auto-running to keep up with this big flying dragon for the whole game. Then a reinforced unit of 6 Prosecutors, 3 of the new ones, 3 of the old ones, all just hanging out together. And for the unit that gets to come back per game for Stormcast, if they come back, obviously the shiny nice new one's going to be coming back, not the crummy old ones from 10 years ago. And that is Krondis's regiment, so 3 units in there. Then we've got the Lord Celestant on Stardrake, who has a couple of upgrades on him. He's got the Artifact of Power Quicksilver Draft, so once per game strike first. I've also gone for the sub-faction, so that when the Stardrake charges on a 3+, it gets strike first as well. So multiple sources of strike first for the same model. So if I fail that roll of 3+, I can use the Quicksilver, or if I get charged, I could use it then. And he's also got Shock and Awe, which means a unit that drops down from the sky near the Stardrake, the enemy will even be -1 to hit against them for the turn. Feel free to drop comments in the chat, by the way, as we're going along, and I'll keep my eye up in the corner of the screen there. So, who is in the Stardrake's regiment? We have 2 units. We have 5 Liberators, because they're very cheap, and I'm just going to give them a go at 100 points. They're not much more expensive than Ether Wings, and they have a lot more meat on their bones than those scrawny birds do. They just lack the speed of the Ether Wings. And then we've got Quester Soulsworn, unit of 6, a good blob of wounds there, and they do reasonable damage output. Not a huge amount, but good blob of wounds for the cost, and you can stick them on objectives. And if you put them on their quest marks objective, then they get a 5+ ward, which is nice. We've obviously got the teleportation chamber, prosecutors, and the questors are going to hang out around there mostly. The prosecutors, so they can have finest hour put on them before they then teleport away 9 inches away from the enemy and then make a 3 dice charge. And the questors, because they do have a teleport already, but again, they could benefit from a finest hour before they teleport with this, and then they've still got their own once per game teleport for later on when they want to make a second teleport. And if I desperately want to teleport both these units in the first turn, then I can, because the questors can just use their once per game ability to do so. So I've got a bit of flexibility there. Then, let's have a look at what Battleplan we're playing. So it's close to the chest in the first one, and that means that you have 4 objectives that are touching your territory, and on your opponent's turn you pick one of those 4 as the primary objective. And if you're the underdog, then you can force your opponent to pick a different one on the roll of a 5+. They've changed how the underdog works now, and it's needlessly complicated, I think. I can see what they're trying to do, but they've made it now so that if you're the underdog, you can take a double turn and still do a battle tactic. And to become the underdog, you either have to have been double turned, or you have to be a certain number of points behind, unless it's a full moon, unless it's on the 3rd Tuesday of a month. So there's a whole flow chart I've seen that explains it all in detail, but it's quite complicated deciding whether or not you're the underdog. But to simplify it, if you're losing, you're probably the underdog. If someone's doubled you, you're probably the underdog. If you're down by like 6 or more points, you're probably the underdog. But not always. Okay. So, what am I up against? It is Sylvaneth. And there are some big beasties in there, so I'm immediately thinking, Longstrikes would have enjoyed this game. They like shooting at big hero monsters, and there's quite a few of them here. I'll just pull up my opponent's list right here. So, it is 3 drops. I'm only 2, so my opponent is going to be able to choose a second Honor Guard ability, which is interesting. And that does mean I'm going to get to choose whether to go first or second, depending on the setup. I'll decide which is going to be best for me at the time. So we've got Alariel right there. 680 points of murdery magic goodness that can just come back to life after you kill her, which is good. There is a unit of Kurnoth hunters with great bows inside the Wildwoods there, as part of her regiment. So that regiment there is over half the army's points on its own. Then the next regiment, we've got Belthanos, first Thorn of Kurnoth here on this giant insect of some description. So Belthanos is about half the price of Alariel, so presumably going to be half as powerful. 2 units of Tree Revenants, which have already been popped out somewhere else when I took this picture. And then the last regiment, there's the Spirit of Durthu, which is a big tree man, and when you kill him, then he probably just survives on 1 wound. Is it 1 wound? Yeah, and then he can heal back up again, because they've got all kinds of healing abilities. So things that are going to come back to life, which is very annoying to deal with. So, do you just try and get into a war of attrition and kill everything when the enemy are going to be coming back to life, or do you try and play a more objective-based game and try and win by positioning rather than murder? And I think that's what I'm probably going to try and do, because often I've fallen into the trap of thinking, those Kurnoth hunters, they've got bows, they're going to be a bit squishy, I'll just go and kill them. And whatever you drop down there goes in, maybe kills 2 or 3 of them, and then the unit you sent in gets killed, can't come back, and then they eventually heal up. So I don't think I'm going to try and do too much killing in this game. If I do, I'm going to try and concentrate fire and take something out utterly, because it may not come back. There is a dice roll associated with Alariel's return, so if I can get the chance to kill her. I don't think Belthanos can come back, actually, so it's probably worth killing him. And I choose to give away the first turn. So this is because I'm thinking, again, I don't really want to spend too many turns fighting all this lot. So I'd rather let them take the first turn, advance forwards, and then if I want to play keep away, I can. If I want to pick out a juicy target that's out on its own, then I can do that as well. I just don't want to splat my army into this wall of wood and beetle carapace in the first round, basically. I want to let them move out and spread out a bit first. My opponent goes for Reclaim the Realms first, the Order battle tactic, and has a couple of these tree revenant units to just teleport into the corners. Those are my units hanging out in the sky, by the way, the Praetors and the Grandhammer Annihilators. We've got the Honest Wargamer in the chat. Finally, good content. Yes, it is. It's about time we saw some good Age of Sigmar content on YouTube. I haven't had a video in the last couple of weeks because it's been the festive season, which is traditionally quite busy for people, travelling around, seeing family and such, so I haven't played too many games, but we're about to start a non-stop torrent of wargaming tournament goodness. In fact, I'll just go through it right now for anyone who's interested to see what's coming up on this channel. Because not only do we have this event, on Tuesday I'm playing the Old World, one-day event. In about a week's time there is the Mega Old World event, which is 3,000 points of Old World, full tournament. A week after that there's an Age of Sigmar event. A couple of weeks after that, I think there's Star Wars Shatterpoint. Then shortly after that, there's more Old World, then more Age of Sigmar, then Kings of War, then Old World, then Star Wars, then Age of Sigmar, then Old World, then Kings of War, then Age of Sigmar, then Old World, then Kings of War. That's how my calendar's looking at the moment, all the way through until July. So still a few spots to be filled in there, but lots of tournament goodness coming up. AoS says Annihilator's best unit in the game. That is a case that can potentially be made. I'm not sure I'd be making it at the moment. They are good, but they do struggle a bit because of the changes to redeploy in this edition. And if you want to double down on them and take the characters that make charging easier, they become quite expensive then. And they're not really cheap as it is. 210 points for 3 of them. So let's see, what are they competing with at that price? So the Quest of Soulsworn, you get twice as many models for only 10 more points. So twice as survivable as the Grandhammers, and you also get a once per game teleport. What do you lose for that though? Obviously the Annihilators hit harder, and do mortal wounds when they land. So they have different roles. The Annihilators are definitely a hammer unit, and the Questors are more of an anvil, especially if you get them onto their quest-marked objective. So they're just so cool though, the Grandhammers. So I would like to find a place for them in lists, but when they're competing with things like Long Strikes as well, who have got more expensive, so you have to be very careful with your points now, and Vanguard Paladors, which I am currently still assembling. Hopefully they haven't completely pointed them out of play by the time I actually finish painting them, because they have gone up a bit already. Okay, so there's the Tree Revenants hanging out in the corners for some Reclaiming the Realms action, which I will just have to accept because I gave away the first turn. And there is a Cron Spine that's popped up, so that's going to be annoying. But I'm not as concerned because in order to win the game, you don't need to hold every single objective. You can see that I've quest marked this one, by the way. My intent there is that my opponent will have to leave one of these powerful units back there, hanging out next to the quest-marked objective to stop me, because obviously that's an objective I want, because I've quest-marked it. If I teleport onto it, that's going to be bad time for the enemy. So hopefully they hang back a bit, because I don't want to get into a war of attrition, as I was saying. What I want to do is just score points and pick things off. I don't want to just throw myself in and just splat against all that wood and die, because I'm not going to be coming back very much, and the enemy certainly are. So 8 points scored in the first round because they don't have the primary objective because it's all the way over here. Into my first turn, I go for attack on 2 fronts. So I want to take 2 objectives that I did not control at the start of the turn, and one of them has to be controlled by my opponent. So I want to take this one, and also because no one started on this one, I can take that one as well. So I want to take this one off the Spirit of Durthu, which I think I can definitely do. So I can drop down units over there, I can send the Star Drake in there, I can get multiple units attacking the Spirit of Durthu. And if I can knock him down and get 2 units fighting him, the first unit hopefully will get him down to that 1 wound when he pops up with 1 wound again, and then the next unit that strikes can then finish him off. I think that works in the rules. I think you can do that. I think you can kill him with 1 unit, then he pops up, then attack him with the next unit and kill him. And because the Star Drake has Quicksilver, and because of the sub-faction I'm running, I can potentially get 2 units that are striking before Spirit of Durthu gets to strike anyway. So I'm hoping with the combined shooting attacks of things like the Star Drake and whatever else I'm throwing into him, that I can take him down twice in one go and just get him off the table forever. That is the plan. He's out there all on his own, hanging out on an objective. So here we go. The Liberators just move on to this objective on my bottom left. The Questors are still just hanging out here. They're not eager to go anywhere yet. Not only because the objectives that they might want to take are hotly contested right now. Late game, potentially, having 2 teleports in the bag. If they're hanging out here, maybe turn 4 they teleport somewhere, and then turn 5 they use their own teleport. So if there's 2 places I need to be in the last couple of turns, then they're the unit to do it. As long as they stay here. And also if they stay here, it means the enemy aren't going to teleport onto my objectives with the Tree Revenants. So, what do you think happened here? Because I Finest Hour up the Prosecutors, they then use the teleport chamber to land near Spirit of Durthu. He redeploys 2 inches, which means they have an 11-inch charge to make against him on 3 dice. And they fail it with a reroll. Wow, wow, wow. The Star Drake does make it in, though. Prosecutors, however, do not. So I do manage to knock down the Spirit of Durthu. I think I managed to kill it and then it comes back with the Star Drake's attacks. So it's still alive. But I have knocked it down once, so if I kill it again, it will be dead. You can see I saved some all-out defense for the Star Drake there because the strike back from Durthu is quite potent and it does 8 wounds back. So obviously had I got both these units in here, I think I would have killed it in one go. I throw out a Purple Sun as well to just go and fight the Kronspine. I think the Kronspine can heal if it eats an endless spell, but it's not wounded anyway, and really I just want to slow it down and keep it there, and blockade off this area to stop the enemy getting through. I'd rather not fight everything at once. Krondis into the middle because he's just a big anvil there that's going to be throwing out spells, and if he gets the chance he'll attack something, but really you can't fit too much stuff in there to fight him, and he's got his 5+ ward bodyguard there as well. You can see he also all-out defensed in the shooting phase as well because he was hit with some covering fire, which I was okay with, and he didn't actually take any wounds from it, so that's good. So I also score 8 points because I don't get this objective, which is the primary, because there's nowhere to land near that, because Belthanos is staying back there, the Kurnoths are staying back there, and the Kronspine's there as well. By the way, at some point, I think I'm going to do a series of videos, 5 things wrong with insert game system. In the Age of Sigmar one of the things that I'm going to be talking about is the way spells are used in the game, because it's cool having spell effects with physical representations on the table, but they're not used in a cool, fun way. They're used in a weird, shutting things down sort of a way. Like to screen out areas to stop enemies teleporting in there is a common use for them, especially as a reaction when you do your counter magic. So I think that's just a bad use for them because they're not really adding fun to the game. They're kind of taking fun out of the game because it's shutting things down rather than doing a fun thing of their own. So I think that's bad. And one of the other things I see that's wrong with Age of Sigmar as well, actually, also includes endless spells, which is the fact that you have to carry so much goddamn stuff around with you. Like between the faction terrain and your endless spells, you're like carrying a second army wherever you go. So I think that's a bit much as well. Spoiler alert for 2 of the top 5 things wrong with Age of Sigmar. Let's see. OA says, I don't got Prosecutors, what can I play as well? Are you saying you don't own Prosecutors, what units would be good to use in their place? Because people at the moment, what do people like? They like Vanguard Paladors. They're very hot right now. Vigilors actually are quite good at the moment. And because you can use them to get +1 to hit for your other shooty units, which is quite powerful because you don't necessarily want to be using all-out attack all the time, because those command points are precious, and the more you preserve, the more you can use them for all-out defense and all-out attack, and other fun things like powering through and counter-charges. I find counter-charge actually rarely comes up because it's twice the cost of all the other commands, which is weird because not all the commands are equally powerful, but they seem to be set on everything is either 1 or 2, and there's only one thing that's 2 command points. So it's a bit weird. So those seem to be hot, those units. Also, I think Bow Judicators people have been talking up lately, even though they are going to get deleted in a few months' time. So I wouldn't put too much faith in them. Okay, so it's 8 points each going into the second round, and my opponent wins the priority and chooses to take the turn. And I make this objective over in the corner the primary objective. My opponent chooses take the flanks, which he's already set up to do because the tree revenants are still just hanging out there, and I'm not too bothered about them as long as they're out of my way. We've got some fresh wild woods that have just popped up on the table there. They kind of look like comedy mustaches as well, these templates for them. The Stardrake is taking damage, down to 5 wounds from the various sources of attack that are coming in. I do manage to cast a -1 to wound ability on Alariel with Krondys, which is cool. And I find that Krondys ends up using a lot of counter casting because all the spells that you want to use are quite short range. So the -1 charge dice is only 12 inches, and all the other debuffs are 18 inches. So at the start of the game you can rarely use those unless you have some way to teleport Krondys immediately at the start of the game. So what often happens is you move up turn 1, and then in the enemy's turn, you then get to cast one of those spells, one of those debuffs. And because you've got +2 to cast, that counteracts the -1 from doing a counter spell. So then you're paying a command point to get one of those debuffs off in the enemy turn. So like -1 to hit or -1 save, whatever you think is going to be relevant. And usually on the enemy turn, it's going to be something to stop their attacks coming into you. So -1 to wound, just to put off Alariel and make her a bit weaker if she does get into a fight this turn. So the Kurnoth hunters kill the Stardrake. So the Stardrake is dead, which is sad, but it's not the end of the world because it did heavily damage the Spirit of Durthu. And not only that, but it's also, if we look at the wide shot, the battle is being contested along this line now. And one of these things isn't even an enemy unit. And we look at the objectives that I'm on. I've got good power on 4 of the objectives here. I don't actually have anyone sitting on this one, but I've got units nearby that can prevent the enemies getting to it. And the enemy are only really in a good position on 2 of the objectives. So positionally, I don't think the Spirit of Durthu wants to really fight all the prosecutors anytime soon, because I think at the moment they've got a good chance of killing him. He's not that healthy right now. He's not healed back up to full anywhere near. So he would be in danger if they got into him. So, and even then, even if the prosecutors did get killed, that would only make it 3-all on territory. So I think at the moment, the battle being contested here rather than a straight diagonal line, I quite like that. I don't think the Tree Revenants are going to deal with Liberators or the Questors down here. So I think my objectives are safe. And Belthanos is hanging back because it doesn't want me to teleport the Questors over there. And the Kurnoths aren't getting that much done. They do finish off the Stardrake in this turn, but they didn't do anything to Krondys in the previous round. There's nothing that's really juicy target for them right now, because obviously the 5+ ward on Krondys makes him a little bit tasty against enemy attacks. Okay, Stardrake down. Alariel gets into Krondys with the -1 to wounds. That's hopefully going to make her less effective in the fight there. And into combat, I all-out attack, all-out defense with Krondys, and he does take 9 wounds though still, even with the -1 to wound debuff. And then Alariel takes a load of damage back as well. And there we go. So 6 points for the enemy because I still hold this objective because the Stardrake died on it, but Spirit of Durthu did not manage to charge the prosecutors from there, so couldn't end up on the objective. Because he was locked in combat until the shooting phase, you see. Okay, my turn 2. I go for Do Not Waver. 2 units fight, no units die. I'm very confident in this because I think, if we look at the wide shot here, Krondys I don't think is going to die, because I think I'm going to kill Alariel this turn and then she'll come back to life because I'm going to be dropping units down to fight her as well. I've got the Annihilators to come in. Spirit of Durthu I think will get killed as well. He may well get shot to death. Prosecutors can throw their javelins at him. I've also got, when the Annihilators land, maybe they could do damage to either of these 2 units. So I think my unit's going to be safe from dying this turn. I'm not going to put them in too much danger, is my thinking. So, Alariel is killed, but That's because I finest Dowd Crondis manages to kill off Alariel. However, you may notice that the Spirit of Durthu has killed all of the prosecutors. Well, that is unfortunate, isn't it? Because the Annihilators did come in, but I think they failed to do any damage, and they failed to do their charge as well. With a reroll, they failed their charge. So that's sad. I had the choice then of whether to activate Crondis first, or whether to activate the prosecutors first. And I thought Spirit of Durthu probably wouldn't kill all 6 prosecutors in one swipe. So I thought, okay, I just won't kill Durthu this turn. I'll just survive with a prosecutor or 2, and then kill Alariel first, and then worry about Durthu later. But he killed all of them, so that denies the battle tactic. So I underestimated his power there. And there we go, they're all dead. But that doesn't mean I can bring a fresh unit of 3 back in the next turn. You can see the questors have spread out a bit around my teleport chamber, which the reason they're doing that is because they're screening out a 9-inch drop zone onto these 2 objectives so the enemy can't land on them when they teleport. Okay, so that was a mixed bag of a turn. I only scored 2 points as a result of that, because the enemy are then able to take this objective back. Okay, sad times. The enemy get the priority as well, and go for Seize the Centre. Oh no, they don't go for Seize the Centre, it's Slay the Entourage, there we go. And they choose the Annihilators. 3 measly Annihilators, only 9 wounds. You'd think, okay, yeah, we can kill that. Let's try then. So Crondis gets some wounds back with a nice rally. The Kurnoth Hunters, who have had a -1 to wound debuff cast onto them now. And Belthanos is steaming into the action now as well. Not worrying about doing too much screening at the back anymore. Now that Alariel's dead, there are big gaps all over the place, so you can't screen off everything anymore. And Spirit of Durthu gets into these wild woods here, going for the Annihilators. Belthanos gets in here, into Crondis and the Praetors. And you can see damage is being dished out back and forth here. Annihilators go for some all-out defense. And because of that, they actually live. So they deny the battle tactic by surviving the Spirit of Durthu's assault. So, yeah, the prosecutors, all of them just died as soon as he swung his sword. The Annihilators made their saves and lived. So there you go. And Belthanos and Crondis just taking swings at each other. Crondis down to 5 wounds, so he's definitely in the danger zone. And 2 points scored because it's just another failed battle tactic. So my disastrous turn 2 is joined by a disastrous turn 3 for the enemy. Turn 3 for me, I go for Reclaim the Realms. So let's have a look. What am I going to do it with? The Liberators here, the Questors there. I've got Annihilators down here. I've got the Praetors there that can be in this section. And I'm hoping I'm going to kill Belthanos, so Crondis could possibly be in this section, but if not, the Annihilators there who can kill the Spirit of Durthu. And here we go. So the Liberators just hanging out on the objective. The Questors are still hanging out there, just to prevent enemy teleports onto my objectives. They're being very defensive, the Questors in this game. They haven't fought anything yet, they haven't teleported anywhere, just biding their time, waiting for the right moment to pop out. So Belthanos is killed by Crondis. 3 prosecutors come in and land on this objective at the back. And the Annihilators do get killed, but it's fine because the prosecutors are over on that side anyway. And I even finest houred the remaining Annihilators, but they still get killed by Spirit of Durthu. So I do get my battle tactic because I had the Praetors in the section down here and the prosecutors up there. My opponent gets turn 4 priority though, but you can see I'm swinging back into this now. Take their land for my opponent is going to be a very easy one because they're already there. A unit just hanging out in the corner that's so cheap, it's not worth it for any of my units to go and kill them. And they can just score multiple battle tactics from that position. I make this the primary objective in this turn. I don't think the enemy are going to get to it. I have put a -1 to hit debuff on the Kurnoth Hunters as well, in addition to the -1 to wound that I did on my last turn. Yeah, so I did one of them on my turn, and then one of them as a counter spell in the next turn. Then you can see Alarielle has come back to life as well, up on the hill, as you'd expect, so she is back. But again, I'm not bothered too much about War of Attrition. I just want to pin the enemy back in this area as much as possible and prevent the tree revenants from scoring points on my objectives. And so far it's kind of working, but as you can see I have lost Krondis now. So I'm still feeling okay though, because I think positionally I've got some good stuff going on here. But as it is, I haven't really killed anything, because Alarielle's come back to life and Spirit of Durthu is now healing. So, 6 points scored for the enemy. And yeah, because my land was taken, holding some objectives. Turn 4 for me, I go for take the flanks, because the Liberators are in position to do it down there, and the Prosecutors are in position to do it up there. So a nice easy one. Questors not going anywhere yet, because there's still enemy units that can teleport, and this is going to be a very tight game for scoring, so they're just hanging out back here still. And I score another 8 points, because I am holding more objectives than the enemy. So I'm slowly chipping away into the lead. My opponent does get first crack at round 5 though, and puts the Spirit of Durthu onto this objective, taking it off me. Alarielle onto that objective, taking it off me, but the Prosecutors are safely out of range of her. And we've got Tree Revenants jumping into the middle. And the Kurnoth Hunters as well. So, what am I going to do to score some points in the next round? I really need to get some objectives, because I hold these two right now, and that's it. So I ideally want 2 more objectives. So I would like this one, or this one. The Questors can teleport to an objective to take it. So let's see what I can do. I go for take their lands. So I think I'm already in a position to do that, because I can just choose the enemy Wildwoods and teleport the Questors onto one of the objectives there. And that is that. So I score 6 points as well, which should just be enough for a very tiny win. And there you go. So, yep, I win by 2 points in the end. Let me pull up that page on Millarchy, which is where these things are scored. Yep, so 2-point win. And overall, I think the plan kind of went okay. Obviously, failing the charge with the Prosecutors, not killing the Spirit of Durthu in turn 1. That was sad. Killing Alarielle did work out, but obviously she's got a very good chance of coming back to life. I didn't even try to kill anything else. Belthanos ended up dying, but I wasn't too bothered about him while he was hiding at the back. And I think the fact that throughout the game, I liked my position more than the enemy's. I felt the enemy were mostly pinned in here, with a couple of units in the corners that weren't actually contributing to the objective scoring. They were just doing battle tactics. So they couldn't get involved in the game because they were required for battle tactics scoring. We both probably got a bit unlucky at failing a battle tactic during the game. And very, very close, obviously. I think it is quite tricky for Stormcast against a force that just comes back to life. Because if you look at like Grand Hammer Annihilators as an example of a hammer unit that goes in, kills something, then dies, if that thing that they killed then comes back to life, that's not much of a trade. So you have to be aiming for things that are way more expensive than them. And Alarielle is, but it's very easy for her to come back. Spirit of Durthu is not hugely more expensive than a regular hammer unit, so he's a good target to take down. But like Kurnoth Hunters, even 3 Grand Hammer Annihilators, definitely not going to kill all 6 of them. And then they're ultimately going to lose because it's only 9 wounds in the unit going in to attack them. And then they'll probably end up rallying back later on as well. So it's tough dealing with, as the kids call it, recursion. And I don't really like it as a concept in the game. I think they should just give things more wounds to make them more survivable instead of letting them come back to life. Apart from Undead, obviously, and some other select armies where it makes thematic sense to be bringing units to life during a battle. On to the next round, after a win in round 1, and we're playing the Vice, which is bad for Questor Soulsworn because the objective they pick as their quest marked objective disappears at the end of round 1. Wow, wow, wow. What I would like to see is an errata so that the quest marked objective moves so that, for example, they add in a line of text so that this objective then becomes this one, rather than it's deleted and is replaced with this one. Maybe the objective moves to here and then moves to here. So if you have a quest marked objective in the corner, it would then transfer to this one and then transfer to this one. I think that would be fair. So let me pull up my opponent's list for this one. I've put my terrain in the corner with the 2 usual suspects around it. And we've got Liberators out in the corner because there is actually an objective right in the corner at the start of the game. The middle objectives aren't active yet. On the side, we've got the Annihilators and the Praetors again, and my endless spells. My opponent is playing the Soulblight Gravelords. And what do we have here? We have 2 drops. We have Manfred von Karstein. We have Reinforced Black Knights. We have Blood Knights. We have 2 units of Direwolves. And in the next regiment, we have a Necromancer. We have a unit of Direwolves, a unit of Fellbats, a reinforced unit of Graveguard, and some of those units are starting off in the grave, and that doesn't work the way it used to. You don't just have grave sites anymore. You just bring them up from a terrain feature, which says to me that when they get their next book, everyone seems to get faction terrain now. They'll probably get some kind of faction terrain you can place that you then have to raise them from, rather than just using any terrain on the table. That seems a bit odd. So, lots of wolves, and my prediction for this game is that it's not going to go well. Because it's loads of crummy units, lots of wounds to absorb my high quality attacks, and then they can just come back to life. So I think I'm going to get chaffed up by wolves endlessly in this game. So my plan is to try and lure Manfred, or one of the big hammer units, into a fight and kill them, which will hopefully then lead to the rest of the army not being able to output too much. But for most of the game, the objectives are really far apart. It's only the last 2 turns in the middle here where I think I have the edge, because I don't think the enemy want to engage with my 2 dragons. So early on in the game, I'm not going to be able to cover all this ground. So in the first 3 turns, scoring might be a bit of an issue. Unless I do immediately eye up that these bats are guarding this corner objective on their own, and that does give me a little bit of an idea. So I am going first, and I go for seize the centre. So here is my strategy. Purple Sun over here to block the advance of some of the enemy troops, and stick both my dragons in the middle and invite the enemy forwards and say, would you like to come and fight my dragons? Any unit that comes in here, I think they will kill. Direwolves, they'll kill, and then a fresh unit of Direwolves will come back next turn. Okay, I can live with that. I only have to do it twice. Anyone wants to attack them, together, I think we'll get killed. So it's a challenge. Do you want to come in and attack my dragons? Or do you not attack them? What do you do if you're not attacking them? Do you put like a line of wolves around them? Do you make me countercharge to try and kill them? Do you allow them both to maybe get into your squishier units that really want to be charging, like the knights? Do you just keep feeding them an endless line of wolves? So, laying down the gauntlet in the middle of the table, bring it on into the dragons. The questors decide that their mission is going to be to try and kill the bats. I had a choice here of whether to use the prosecutors or the questors for this job. And I decided the prosecutors would be better later on at killing one of these powerful units, because they're more of a hammer type than the questors are on the charge. So I thought the prosecutors would be better for that job. So the questors drop down over here, try and charge into the fellbats, who redeploy away from them to make it a slightly harder charge. They don't quite succeed, the questors, but if they did, if I took this objective in turn 1 off the bats, then that would put me into an advantageous position scoring wise going into the next few turns. And then they still have a once per game teleport they can use as well, so they wouldn't be stuck out there, was my thinking. However, didn't pay off. I think it was worth the risk though. Obviously, if I'd used the Prosecutors, I would have had a 3 dice charge and probably would have made it, but there's higher chance the Prosecutors then just get killed by something over there. And then I wouldn't be able to use them at their full capacity to kill one of the big, horrible units later on. And I feel a sneeze coming on. Only one sneeze? That's wild. So 8 points for me. And into the enemy turn. Do Not Waver is chosen, which is 2 units fight, no units die. Which is a bit risky, because it depends who you're going to attack. So I've put a debuff of -1 to wound onto the Black Knights, just in case they were thinking of charging in and like going full all in on trying to kill my dragons this turn. And there's a line of shackles in front of both the dragons and a line of wolves. And as soon as I see this, I think, actually, that is a bit risky, because there's enough distance there for both the dragons to reach over the top of the shackles. So, potentially, I could get both dragons attacking one unit of wolves, which could deny the battle tactic. So that's what I was thinking immediately. Some Graveguard have popped up from the grave over here, with the Necromancer falling back a bit there. And the wolves are really just spreading out, protecting the hammer units. The Blood Knights and the wolves over here want to attack the Purple Sun, because that will satisfy the battle tactic as well, as long as they get to fight something. And they kill the Purple Sun. And Krondys and the Stardrake. So, whichever one of them struck first, the removal of the direwolf corpses meant that the second one could then potentially be taken out of range because of the shackles there. So I think the Stardrake attacked first, and the ones that were nearer Krondys were taken away, so then Krondys just had to attack the shackles instead. So it was still a risk, because if one less wolf had died as a result of the Stardrake's attacks, Krondys still would have been able to attack, and could have definitely killed 5 of them on his own. So that was a bit of a risk by the wolves, but they get away with it. 8 points each going into round 2. So, I get the first go in round 2, and I choose Take Their Land, which is going to be a nice easy one. I choose this wood over here on the left. I've got my Questors, I've got my Prosecutors down. I'm just going all in into the Graveguard now on this side, because I'm thinking I want to just take this objective. And it's far away from Manfred and all the Knights. So I'll put my squishy Prosecutors over here, team them up with the Questors, and try and just wipe out all the Graveguard and own this objective. Krondys and Stardrake still dealing with wolves in the middle, which I can live with for the time being, and I've dropped down Annihilators as well, who wanted to go after the Blood Knights. However, you may notice most of these units aren't in combat. That's because they all failed their charges. So the Prosecutors failed a rerollable 9-inch charge on 3 dice. The Questors failed a 5-inch charge. The Annihilators failed their 9-inch charge as well. And now they're all just sitting out in the open waiting to die. Sad times, just non-stop charge failures all through the turn. I think one of these big creatures may have been able to charge something, because Krondys was taken out of combat, wasn't he? By... let's go back. Yeah, he wasn't in combat with the wolves. So he was able to, like, walk to within 3 away of, like, there, and could have potentially charged this unit, but I don't think he made a charge either. So just lots of charge failures. And into the enemy turn 2. I only score 4 points. Take Their Land is chosen by the enemy, and it's going to be my piece of terrain, because a unit can just come back to life next to it. So I think Take Their Land is a little bit of a flawed battle tactic. I'm not sure I would include it in the rules, especially while you're trying to sell people faction terrain that can be used for that objective, which I've found a little bit weird. And bats are coming in, Graveguard are coming in, just trying to swamp my units. The Blood Knights would like to probably kill the Annihilators and the Praetors, which is going to take away my bodyguard save for Krondys, but really the Annihilators are the big threat right there. And the wolves just encircling to keep my big dragons away from the squishier stuff. But lots of the wolves do get killed still. And the Graveguards swarm in. And the Annihilators actually get to punch the Blood Knights and just murder 2 of them, because you can't strike first with everything. And the Questors are dropping though, but so are the Graveguard. They're losing some numbers as well. And one of the Annihilators dies. And the Questors are finished off, so I can bring a fresh unit of 3 Questors down somewhere for objective purposes. And at the end of turn 2, my opponent gets 10 points. So it's just very tricky because I can't control all the objectives because they're so spread so far apart. You saw in the last game how I was able to use 1 unit of Questors to lock down 2 objectives. I can't really do that in this game because they're all so far apart. At the end of the game, I'm confident I'll be able to score points in the middle. But it might be too late by then. I might be at too much of a deficit, especially after the last turn when everybody failed their charge. So you can see the Stardrake in the next turn is fighting the Black Knights, gets into them, does some good damage, eats some of them. The Annihilators continue to fight the Blood Knights with Krondys, and the 3 Questors that came back to life successfully charged into the rear of the Necromancer, so they're hoping to kill him. Now Manfred is over here. What Krondys wanted to do is to get the Blood Knight murdered in the shooting phase and then be able to get into combat with Manfred. But because of the space and because his base is so huge, he's not going to be able to fit through there. Everyone ends up dying in that crevice, but it was due to combat, so he can't then pile in again. The Stardrake has Finest Hour and all-out attack this turn. Down to 14 wounds, but is doing a good job clearing out Black Knights. Annihilators and Wolves staring at each other. That should say 6 there, not 5, because you can't really score 5 points in this one. So I was able to get my... Did I take a double? I don't remember. Did I just not take a picture of a battle tactic there? Yeah, because I don't hold more objectives than the enemy. Surely. So it must have been a battle tactic. I just don't think I took a picture of it. Whichever one I chose. Oh, is that it? There we go. Slay the Entourage. Yeah. I killed the Blood Knight, which was part of the General's regiment. So that was an easy one. So, into the next turn. And you can see the Prosecutors getting dwindled down in this big bloodbath here. Being murdered by the Graveguard. That are obviously popping back up. Questors have killed the Necromancer by now, so that's a bit of a loss for the enemy. And my opponent goes for Inevitable Demise this turn, which is 2 or more friendly units wholly within enemy territory and more than 9 inches away from all enemy. So again, that's another battle tactic where that's kind of weird one. It's a bit like Reclaim the Realms, which is also just thinking about how you want to play a game, which is to kill the enemy and fight the enemy. Some of the tactics don't encourage you to do that particularly. So there's obviously wolves hanging out in my half of the table that are going to find that very easy to complete. And if we go back here, you can see that Krondys, because he's now off the middle objective, I was hoping to just leave him there for the whole game and not move him off that spot. But because I was behind on points, I felt I had to come off and start actually killing things and trying to get to things and kill them before the end. Otherwise, sitting on this isn't going to give me enough points at the end. So I'm going to be too far behind. So I have to score some points earlier than that, sadly. Stardrake is just murdering the Blood Knight, or the Black Knights, to death though. But he is down to 4 wounds now. And after 3 turns each, my opponent gets another 10. So I'm definitely the underdog. And I get turn 4, Reclaim the Realms, and I don't think I actually score it, because what happens is the Liberators are in this section, the Questors teleport up there, I've got the Stardrake in this section, and the Annihilator was hoping that Krondys would be able to murder enough of the wolves to claim this section. But, as you can see, there's still a few of them left, so I failed that tactic, I think. And then it's my opponent's turn, take the flanks, a nice easy one because there's already units in position to do it. Manfred is going to try and kill the Annihilator, and the Liberators are being surrounded. Liberators redeploy onto the middle objective. Manfred gets into the Annihilator. The Black Knights, which is a fresh unit of Black Knights that have come back because I finished off the other one. And they do make it into the Liberators and wipe them out on the charge. So it's not looking too great. Another 10 points for the opposition. I just can't stop the undead from scoring. So I think instead of laying down the gauntlet in the middle, probably what I should have done is... should I have spread the 2 dragons out, one on each side, and actually been contesting the areas we could score early in the game rather than inviting the enemy into the middle? Because I was hoping I would chew through the wolves really fast and then get to the meat, which kind of worked for the Star Drake, killed all the Black Knights, but they don't care because they just come back to life. So, probably should have tried some alternate strategy in this one. Black Knights and Graveguard into the Star Drake in the middle. Krondys is fighting Manfred. And you can see I've put -1 onto Manfred's save, and I'm down to 6 wounds with Krondys there. But Krondys does murder Manfred in the end. And in the last turn I'm able to pick up 4 points, which isn't going to be enough, because I can't take this objective because there's too much undead swarming it. And then my opponent goes for Seize the Centre, but is not able to do it, obviously. Hold on, that's wrong. Didn't do Seize the Centre, because 10 points were scored. I can't remember which one it is, but the dice is still resting on there, but that's wrong, I think. So, loads of points scored for undead. Obviously, if you just look at the table, Stormcast are doing pretty well. We've got 2 big dragons left. There's barely any undead left on the table that you can see. The Questors are still alive up there. But the undead just racked up all the scoring early in the game because there was too many objectives for me to cover. And would it have been better off having 1 dragon on each side and then making sure I was able to hold these objectives for longer, even though the enemy can teleport out of terrain pieces when they die? So out of this one, which is near to where the objectives are. I feel like that was going to be a tricky one. Anytime I see an army that's got loads of disposable chaff that can come back to life, I think it's going to be a struggle. I don't think having long strikes would have helped in this game particularly. And... oh yeah, one thing I didn't even mention actually. Earlier in the game, this endless spell. Let me try and find the moment, because this was quite a big deal. So I was hoping to actually kill Manfred earlier in the game. And where was it? Because there was a gap left open. I'm trying to find the exact moment that spell went down. And I'm sure this is very entertaining. Yep, it's still there. It was quite early in the game, I think. Okay, you get the idea anyway, because that spell was in the corner. What I wanted to do was drop something down up here, take their land, and then go and kill Manfred. Take their land was like a backup, because if I didn't kill Manfred, by failing my charge, at least I could stay on this terrain piece and claim it. However, the enemy were able to successfully countercast, and I failed to unbind this endless spell which landed here, which meant I couldn't land a unit there. So that shut that down. And I think the mistake on my part wasn't doing take their land on a piece of terrain. It was doing take their land and combining that with an obvious plan to murder Manfred. Because I was doubling down and trying to do 2 things that were reliant on being in this area of the table. If it was just one of those 2, then maybe the enemy wouldn't necessarily think it's worth a command point to screen that out, or my backup plan would have been somewhere else. But because I obviously wanted to try and kill Manfred, and then if I failed my charge I would stay here on the piece of terrain, I felt maybe that was too obvious, so it was too easy for my opponent to try to block it. And I obviously knew that endless spells can be placed and you can screen stuff out. But I was hoping that with the -1 to cast it, and with my unbinding hero being right there, that's enough hoops to jump through that either your opponent thinks it's not worth trying to do it because there's more than 1 dice roll involved in that, or they fail with the spell, or you succeed with the unbind. So all of those things have to go in your opponent's favour in order for it to work. So I thought one of them perhaps would go in my favour, was my thinking. But that is what Endless Spells are good for now, blocking off space on the table, which is a sad use for them, but it is important in the game right now. That's how they work. Okay, let's go back towards game 3 again. Lots of wolves. Whenever I see wolves, I think I'm going to lose now. I think I had a couple of games in the last edition where someone brought, I can't remember if it was 40, but it was a very large amount of wolves, and you just can't chew through them fast enough with Stormcast because there aren't enough attacks. Maybe with some of different units, maybe Stormcast could do it. I don't know which ones. Any with a lot of attacks. I wonder if Vanguard Paladors could give them a good go. Right, I think we're almost to the end of this game again now. Okay, Scorched Earth, round 3, and I'll just pull up my opponent's list here. So Scorched Earth, everyone always forgets that you can do it, but if you're controlling an enemy territory objective and you're the underdog, you can get rid of it. Which is such a weird, specific set of circumstances. Because if you're the underdog, that means you're losing. If you're losing, how many objectives in enemy territory are you realistically going to be holding? I don't think it's going to be that many. And if you are losing, why would you want to shut down the few objectives that you are holding? So I think it's an odd set of circumstances that have to come up in order for you to actually use that. Very strange. Okay, so you can see that I'm up against Archaean. Bum bum bum. The evil Lord of the Everchosen himself on his gigantic beast, possibly the tallest model in Age of Sigmar, and he's certainly a big lad. Let's pull up the list right here. It is 2 drops, Arcane the Everchosen, 870 points. And as soon as I see Arcane plop down on the table, this is one of those occasions where I'm thinking, I wish I had some long strikes, because all those shots shooting at him with Rend 3, because he's a hero, I don't think he would enjoy that. I don't think Arcane likes long strikes very much. There is a unit of Reinforced Chaos Chosen in Arcane's regiment, which is a massive blob of very tough Chaos Warriors there. In the other regiment there is a Gaunt Summoner, and with the Gaunt Summoner we have a unit of Chaos Knights out there, and we have a Mutilith Vortex Beast, which isn't obscenely powerful. It's a really big, gribbly monster, but it's only 180 points, so it's not ridiculously good. And there is a piece of faction terrain that summons up evil, chaotic points and then spews them out and damages objectives and such later on. So, what is my plan? I would very much like to kill Archaean. I don't know how realistic it's going to be. I'm going to see whether the chance presents itself to go all in on him. He's not currently being screened out by anything, so there's a potential to attack him with everything I've got. Just fling everything at Archaean, kill him, and then worry about the rest later, because he's the only thing that's really fast in there and also packs a serious punch. The Chosen are really good, but they're not particularly fast. You can have spells that will make them faster, but I could theoretically kill the Sorcerer as well. 5 Chaos Knights I'm not too concerned about, mostly about Archaean. So, we'll see. I've got my dragons fairly close together, so they can potentially countercharge if anything attacks the other, maybe supporting each other. And I've got my Praetors on the table, because I know how fast Archaean is, so potentially he could charge, and I don't want him to kill Krondys in turn 1. That would be bad. So I want to have my ward save available. I've resisted the temptation to deploy further back from the line, because I wouldn't mind too much if the enemy wants to charge out and try and get me turn 1, because I can redeploy a bit. They might fail their charge and then leave themselves open in the exposed area to be multi-charged by my units, which I could accept. And I've got the Annihilators and the Prosecutors in the sky. The Prosecutors are not worrying about being around the Teleportarium in this game, because the enemy has fast units. I don't want the Prosecutors to be killed off immediately. and it's a possibility that could happen. Something like Archaean could get to like here, turn 1, charge Krondys, do loads of damage, and then maybe end up with piling in, ending up like over here. And if I have the prosecutors around this terrain, that could then drag them into a fight, not on the charge, against Archaean. So I just don't want to risk them being on the table yet. I want to use them to snipe something out. And in fact, I've taken the Honor Guard ability so that they're going to be +1 to hit and wound against Chosen, because I think that's going to be a really tough unit to take down, and I want to get every advantage I can get in dealing with them at some point, just not yet. So that's going to be the Prosecutor's job, unless something more pressing comes up, which it might. So my opponent gets the first turn and goes for Ordained Charge. So pick an objective, complete this battle tactic. If at the end of your turn 2 or more friendly units charged, and 1 or more of those units are contesting that objective and you control that objective. So that sounds quite complicated, but what it boils down to is Archaean is going to try and charge the Star Drake and take that objective off me. As long as another unit charges, that's okay. And you can see I've thrown out a Purple Sun, which obviously makes the battle tactic a bit easier because another unit could charge that. But I don't care about that, I just don't want to be fighting yet on the enemy's terms. I don't mind the Star Drake being charged usually because it's got Quicksilver to go first, but against Archaean I'm not so sure because I wouldn't be able to eat him. I could eat 3 Chaos Knights potentially before they even get to strike, so that would be quite funny. Pahadin says made it in for a live report. Excellent. So the positioning, by the way, the Star Drake probably would prefer to match up against Chaos Knights than Archaean. But with deployment, obviously you don't know where everything is when you're setting up, and you have your own priorities when deploying as well, deciding what has to go down on the table first, and which units you're putting in the sky, and in which numbers. So you can't always get the matchups on the table you want. So obviously Star Drake would be much better off fighting these 2 units, where he could just eat some of them before the fighting even begins, rather than Archaean. Krondys probably more suited to fighting Archaean because he's got a ward save. And he's got debuff spells that he can be throwing at Archaean as well. You can see the Jaws are heading towards the Star Drake as well. I've thrown out the Purple Sun because I would rather nobody charge my Questors or Krondys yet. Because if anyone charges Krondys, that locks him down, meaning that he wouldn't be able to then get to a potential Archaean if he's over here. The Knights and the Chosen moving up, they're going to be charging the Purple Sun. Archaean moves up, the Star Drake redeploys a couple of inches away, so it's a slightly harder charge for Archaean now. And the Vortex Beast and the Chaos Knights get into the Purple Sun. Archaean makes the charge into the Star Drake, so we'll see what happens there. And takes a wound initially from the charge. And the Purple Sun is dead. All-out defense on the Star Drake. Well, Archaean has a magic sword. If he rolls 2 6s in the to wound phase, then the model is just removed from the game. It is slain. The only units that can avoid that, I think, would be Sons of Behemat Mega Gargants, because they have a rule that just says any rule that would cause this unit to be slain, then you just take a certain number of wounds instead. So I think they're immune to it. But anybody else, roll 2 6s to wound, and Star Drake is dead. So roll a couple of 6s, it's dead. Wow, wow, wow. It did 6 damage to Archaean before it died, though. So, an 870 point model has killed the Star Drake, so it's about twice the cost of a Star Drake, almost. And, yeah, those are the 2 6s that did it in the to wound step. So what's my plan now? The entire enemy force, apart from Archaean, is in this very small, compact area. I would rather not fight them, so I think I'm going to just throw everything at Archaean on my turn and try and kill him. Because if I can do that, the rest of the enemy units are all in this little blob over here, and they don't look quite so scary without him. So, I'm going to throw Krondys at him. I'm going to drop down Annihilators to throw at him. I'm going to bring in the Prosecutors and throw them at him as well. Just everybody is going to attack Archaean. Hopefully, the Annihilators will make their charge, and then that will mean that they can put Strike Last onto Archaean as well. Okay, here we go. 10 points for the enemy. Turn 1 for me. Everybody makes it in. So Krondys casts a -1 armor save spell on Archaean, which is going to make a big difference in trying to kill him. Crondis makes the charge. Prosecutors make the charge. Annihilators make a big charge. They give him strike last. So everyone's going to be able to hit him first. A finest hour Crondis as well. And yeah, we're just throwing everything in there. The questors have teleported onto their quest marked objective on the enemy half of the table. Because why not? I just need to start taking objectives. And I don't think the enemy are going to want to tangle with them too much. What are you going to send at them? You send Chosen at them. I've got a 5+ ward on that objective. The questors are way less a part of my list than the Chosen are in the enemy list, especially if we can kill Archaean. So I don't think they would be able to dedicate those kind of resources to clearing them out. The Chaos Knights probably won't beat them. The Beast probably won't beat them. So you would pretty much have to leave them there on an objective for the whole game and ignore them. And they still have their once per game teleport, because they teleported using this. So they could still bounce onto a different objective later. I just don't think the enemy have the tools to shift them off that objective without putting way too many resources into it right now. So let's see if we can kill Archaean. I went for Slay the Tyrant, by the way, so I was really going all in on this kill the Archaean business. And the Annihilators were here, which meant that there was no direction that Archaean could redeploy to make it a longer charge for the Annihilators, because they were the most important unit, because they're going to give him strike last if they get in. And the Prosecutors have got a longer charge with the 3 dice, so they don't mind if someone redeploys a little bit away from them. So he wasn't able to redeploy very far from anybody. But everyone made it in anyway. You can see the Praetors didn't make it very far to keep up with Crondis though, so no ward save for either of them at the moment. But I had to take the risk, so in they go. Let's start murdering. The Annihilators are striking first. I all-out attack them, and they do a load of wounds to him. And he gets onto making like 18 ward saves of a 5+. And he saves more than half of them. So he survives the Annihilator's attack. Crondis then strikes, because Strike Last has been put onto Archaean. He's got -1 on his save, and Crondis has shut down commands on him as well, so he can't have all-out defense. So Crondis then strikes, gets him down to like 2 wounds, and then the Prosecutors strike, and they finish him off. And they only did 1 excess wound as well, so all 3 of those units only did 1 more wound than necessary to kill Archaean. So that is 870 points dead in exchange for 1 Star Drake, so I think that is a good deal. And I think if we look at the 2 blobs of power, mine is clearly here. The 3 hardest hitting units I've got are right there. My opponents are right there. I've got more resources on the table outside of those power blobs. I think these 2 blobs are relatively evenly matched. If they got into a straight up fight, I think these blobs would have a good fight. But I've also got other units that can be around scoring points as well, so I think I've got the edge right now. 10 points each. My opponent gets first crack at round 2 and goes for attack on 2 fronts, take 2 objectives. One of them has to be taken from the enemy, which is going to be easy because the Beast can get onto this one. And you can see the Jaws is sending itself in there to try and do some damage to Crondis, and it does, but then it dies, of course. And my opponent also takes that objective over there with the Knights. And I can live with that. I'm going to pick something else to try and delete this turn now. So, another 10 points. On to my turn 2, I go for take their land, and I pick this piece of terrain with the Liberators, because they're going over there anyway, so they can do take their flanks later on. Crondis gets into the Vortex Beast with all-out defense, because I wanted to activate the Prosecutors first, because they're using their +1 to hit and wound specifically against the Chosen, which they put as their Honor Guard ability. I've teleported the Quester Soulsworn up onto this objective right in the corner, because I feel like the enemy are going to be pinned in this sort of position here. And in order to take this objective off me, they're going to have to commit units that they can't really afford to commit backwards right now, because this is where the fight's happening. And if they're going backwards, they're not going near any of these objectives, which are all going to be mine as well. So I think that's a good place for the Questors. They've taken that objective, they've now taken that one. So a lot of positioning going on here. The Prosecutors do all get killed, but they take out... How many is that? About 4 of the Chosen, which I can live with. I think that's good. And the Vortex Beast is dead as well, as a result of Crondis. And I've got my Praetors hanging out next to Crondis as well now, so he's got his ward save back. We've got Annihilators in the middle. I'm going to be able to bring in 3 more Prosecutors at some point, which is good. and I'm feeling good. Positionally, I think it's going well, because the enemy have only got 3 units left. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and another one to come down. And there's loads of objectives to fight for. So, we're still scoring big though, 20 each after the first 2 rounds. Round 3, I choose to take the double. Even though it's going to deny me the use of a battle tactic, I'm just going to try and murder the enemy, because if we look at the wide shot here, if the enemy go next, there is a chance they could kill Krondys with both these units. I still think it's a winning position for me, because the enemy have to compact all their forces into this tiny area where there's only 2 objectives. And I've got the rest of the table at my disposal. I've still got a unit of prosecutors to bring in. I think I would just win the game, but I would probably have to avoid fighting for the rest of the game. If I go next, I can kill the knights and the chosen, possibly. I can almost table the enemy in the next turn, I think, because Krondys is there. The Annihilators are going to have a long charge, but they'll have a go. I've got 3 more prosecutors to come in. The Praetors can get in the fight. The Questors can try and charge the Sorcerer. And looking good. So, finest out of the Questors in case they make it into combat. Krondys kills all the Chosen. The Annihilators don't quite get in, but they're just walking into the middle now. The Praetors have got into the Knights. The Prosecutors come in. The new unit of 3 Prosecutors. They charge into the Knights as well. And there's 1 of them left. And you can see that that has gone pretty much to plan. The enemy have barely got any fighting force left. So I score 6. And into the enemy turn. So my opponent goes for take their land. It says order there, but it should be the death page here. Let's see. O says, if Praetors die and I bring them back for 1 CP, they still soul bound to Krondys. No, because it's a replacement unit. So as far as I'm aware, they don't have any of those rules. And the rule that binds them to a hero is done in the deployment phase. So a freshly set up unit wouldn't be able to use it, because that unit didn't exist during the deployment phase. If it was whenever this unit is placed on the table for the first time, by whatever means, then they can bind themselves to a hero. Then you would be able to do it. But I think as it's written, then you can't. So, you can see the enemy are just trying to cover as many objectives as possible here, with the limited numbers that are left. And also, taking my land by piling in the knights towards this piece of faction terrain. But I'm not too concerned about the scoring at this point. The enemy are going to take the lead, though. And then on my turn, I just get control of all the objectives, get the Annihilators into the Endless Spell and the Wizard, kill the Wizard, so the Endless Spell disappears as well. Krondys is getting in there to fight the Knights, takes the objective off them. Praetor's still alive. And yeah, it's looking pretty good. Then in my next turn, I scored 10. Yep, there you go. I was able to... let's see. So my opponent goes for Slay the Entourage. I don't know if I actually did take their land this turn. I might have done that previously. I think I just put the dice next to the wrong one there. I think I actually did take the flanks, because I think the Questors are within 6 of that edge, and the Liberators there. So my opponent goes for Slay the Entourage. He's going to try and kill the final Praetor, but cannot with the Chaos Knight. So there's nothing left for the enemy, so I'm just going to rack up more points. I then go for Seize the Centre in the last turn and score big. My opponent doesn't get to score any points in the last 2 turns because everything was dead. And the Praetor was teleported with the teleport chamber, and the Annihilators just moved into the middle. So another 10 points. And once Arcane went down, my opponent was able to still score big from the residual effect of Arcane's early dominance, but then because he was dead, slowly that double turn there where I scored less, but I wiped out most of the enemy across those 2 turns, meant that then I was able to score big at the end of the game while my opponent was totally wiped out. So that went very well indeed. And I didn't really miss the long strikes in the end in that game. Had Arcane survived on 1 wound, I would have been wishing I had them. They would have been more efficient at killing him than the Prosecutors and maybe even the Annihilators, because they get the extra rend, combined with the -1 save that Krondys throws out. And sometimes you can get the purple sun off as well, who could possibly make a charge. And that can help as well. Purple sun can add a further -1 to saves. So you're really giving people no save at all in those situations, when you're just piling up saves, firing at big hero monsters, so long strikes are already at -3, plus whatever else you're adding on. If you get into combat with Arcane, then you should get to shut down commands with Krondys, which is very powerful, so he can't all-out defense. And the Annihilators got into him, gave him strike last. So I do see a role, actually, for Annihilators. I don't know exactly the best way to use them now, because obviously redeploy has changed how they work. You have to be careful with them, and I think it's easier for skilled opponents nowadays to avoid them than it was before with positioning, because you can set up so they can't surround you, so you've always got a good avenue to redeploy into. But they do give you something to think about, because you don't want to get hit by even just 3 Annihilators. 6 is obviously horribly nightmarish, and then if you kill the 6, 3 fresh ones are going to come back as well. So I do see a place for Annihilators. I don't know if it's worth investing in all the heroes to make them more reliable or better at fighting, because I think they're just too expensive at that stage. Like the Lord Imperatant and Gardas, I don't think that's worth it, but maybe just a unit of 3. They did a pretty good job, other than failing all their charges earlier. So let's have a look at the final leaderboard and see where I finished then. Let me pull that up. So this event had 18 players. There was also a very small old world event going on at the TSN as well. Just some one-dayer events taking place simultaneously. And on the leaderboard, out of 18, I finished in 6th place. So that's not bad at all, is it? And as I'm just scrolling down here, I can see some notable players that I finished above. I'm not going to go through naming them all. Don't want to name and shame. But I think that's pretty good, considering I didn't take any long strikes, and the main goal here was to just have fun with the 2 big dragons. So that was cool. Krondys is really good. I haven't tried him as Karazai yet, but there was a player running Karazai, actually, who finished, let's see, in 4th place. So Karazai is definitely hot at the moment, so I might run Krondys as Karazai at some point just to try him out, and maybe go no wizards, or maybe use the Storm Coven, which I've painted, those 3 wizards. That could be fun. I've also got a Knight Incantor who could also be run as a... what's the other? Spellcaster Knight. You know the one that's not getting deleted. I could run the Incantor as that one until I get another one painted. And I could just try running no magic at all. I think Yndrasta, is she a trap? That's the thing. Is it a trap paying all those points for Yndrasta because she can murder monsters? Because there are already tools in the list to kill monsters, especially long strikes, and she doesn't have many wounds. She dies very easily, and she is very expensive. She dies as easily as Bastion, but she costs a lot more than him, and she doesn't heal as easily as he does. Interesting. Because I did enjoy having these monsters in this game that didn't die so easily. Except obviously when Arcane rolls 2 6s and just kills anything. You can't do much about that. But there's a lot of good options for Stormcast. Some of them good as combos. If you're going for the big monster killing sort of list, I like Krondys in there to put -1 onto their saves. But do you really need that? Do you need to keep stacking up negatives on the saves when you've already got long strikes that can be at -3, just inherently shooting at hero monsters? I don't know if you need even more debuffs necessarily. I don't feel like the Liberators really contributed anything other than sitting on objectives, which Aetherwings could have done for less points and been faster, so they probably would have been better at scoring things, but then they would have died more easily to enemy shooting. I missed having certain teleports. The long strikes with the teleport they can do is very useful if you take that sub-faction. A Knight Zephyros, for example, can do teleports. A Lord Relictor, a Knight Relictor can get teleports. I didn't have that many of them available in this list. Depends who I left near the faction terrain at the start of the game, how many I would have. Knight Arcanum, yes, that's the one. I am going to try the Paladors, the Vanguard Paladors, I've got 6 of them. I haven't painted them yet. I've magnetised the arms, so I can use the spears and also paint the axes as well, depending on which one's hot at any particular time. And if they ever get rid of Vanguard Paladors at some point, which they may well do, because that just seems to be the way they roll, then Stormstrike Paladors will exist for significantly longer, and Stormstrike ones are on larger bases. So all I'd have to do really is either put them on new bases or just put them on base adapters to make their bases bigger. And then I can just run them as Stormstrike Paladors, so I'm not worried about them becoming obsolete. Which is nice. I've also had a thought on my Retributors, who are going to be deleted in June, because they're ye olde. They haven't got any plans for new models for them yet. So I can run my 5 Retributors with another hero in there as a champion. I could run those as 6 Annihilators because they've got big hammers. So I could use possibly the Lord Ordinator because he's also getting deleted. I could use him as the champion of the Retributors to make that a unit of Annihilators, so they don't have to be obsolete either. So I could run 2 units of 6 Grand Hammer Annihilators. I think that would be fun. Okay, let's wrap this one up then, because it's getting late. A one-day event. I like one-day events actually, because it doesn't take up your entire weekend. You still have time to do other stuff. And even then, even if you want to game for the whole weekend, you could do 2 one-day events, and it feels like you've got to play in 2 tournaments instead of just 1. Especially if they're different game systems, you get more juice squeezed out of your weekend. So I like one-dayers. I would like to see more of them. But the particularly GW game systems, the trend is very much 2-day events. You get a lot more one-dayers in smaller game systems, and like Kings of War does a lot more one-day events. I rarely attend 2-day events for that, except for the really big ones that are near to me. But one day, I like it. You don't play that many games, which is difficult to separate the leaderboard if you've got a lot of players at one-day events. So I can understand why some people prefer 2, because you can just play more, and it's a clearer picture of how the rankings are looking at the end. So it's understandable, people's opinions. Let me know what you thought of the unit selections and any of the tactical choices made in this event. Any of the opposing lists you had any thoughts on as well. What you think is hot for Stormcast at the moment, what you think is not hot right now, what you think is definitely cold or at least a bit chilly. And don't forget to check out all the links in the description. There's various social media shenanigans down there. And if you want to keep this content torrent flowing towards you into your subscription feed on a regular basis, I told you how many tournaments are coming up. There's a lot of them for various different game systems. If you want to see even more tournaments, then why not pledge your entire life savings to the Patreon so I can buy more tournament tickets? Because tournament tickets are where most of my disposable income goes at the moment. A very high percentage of it, actually. A vast amount. I paid for a lot of tournament tickets in advance this month because a lot of tournaments were announced around the same time, so I just signed up for a load of them en masse, which is why I was able to tell you about my next 6-month tournament calendar earlier, with lots of that filled in. Let's see. It always says, where are you from? UK. Yes, I'm in Nottingham, which is obviously perfect for GW game systems because it's very close to Warhammer World, so it's very convenient. I don't go to that many events there because they sell out in 2 minutes. As soon as they announce the tickets, they're just gone immediately, so I don't always get those in time. But I have played quite a few games at Warhammer World as well. Some people can't particularly play there because all their armies are proxies or alternate miniatures or 3D prints that GW frown upon if they see you trying to use those in their gaming halls. All my GW armies are pure, I think. Yeah, I think all my Age of Sigmar and my Fantasy Dwarf armies, I think they're all 100% GW stuff. Okay, time to end this. Don't forget to drop your comments in, like the video obviously, and subscribe and all that good stuff. And follow me on all the social medias. And all that remains to be said is, good night out there, whatever you are.